Yeah, yesterday Mark set the expectation we were going to be building a botnet on stage, and I told Mark afterwards, well, to do it correctly, that would be illegal. So maybe we'll talk about how that would work. I'm really excited to be here. Mark set the expectation yesterday that I'm here to scare you guys. So I started thinking last night, what can I do to scare you around cybersecurity? And I thought, well, I could come up here dressed like a politician. That would be frightening. I could dress up like Celine Dion because apparently the Canadians came down to see her and she's not even performing this week. And I'm very sorry. She'll be back next week, actually, I'm hearing. So instead of taking that approach, we are going to talk about cybersecurity. And truthfully, some of what's happening in the market today, as you probably know, is horrifying. There's articles every single week that are talking about breaches that are happening with your customers that just boggle the mind. And we're trying to figure out how can we build security businesses to protect our customers against this threat of attack. And so that's the goal today. We're going to wrap up with 7 thoughts that I'd like to give you on how I'm finding partners, building security businesses. I have the privilege of speaking every week with our partners on a one-on-one basis, and we talk through what does it look like for you. Maybe you're building a managed service offering. Maybe you're building a new type of assessment offering. Maybe you're signing a very unique combination of vendors. I want to provide you 7 thoughts that I'm finding as commonalities for partners that are building security businesses. But before we do that, I want to jump first into a little bit of a tip for you on how you can stay current on cybersecurity, because a lot of it has to do with engaging with your customer in a meaningful way, conveying to them the threat that they're facing. And so one of the things that I do on a daily basis is I read a couple of different websites and news articles. And one of them that I wanted to bring to your attention is a website called databreachtoday.com. Now, it's not Data Breach Weekly. It's not Data Breach Monthly. It's Data Breach Today for a good reason, and that is because every single day there's some pretty scary articles out here about what's happening. Just this morning, we learned that the White House has nixed the cybersecurity czar position in the White House, and they're pushing the cybersecurity governance down to the National Security Council. That's pretty impactful in terms of cybersecurity for this country. It sends an interesting message. We'll see how that shakes out. We just read today that there's, if you've ever heard of PGP, Pretty Good Privacy, it came out in the 90s. It's an open source project to encrypt your email. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people have been using it forever. Uninstall it, right? Because apparently we just found out that there's 2 massive vulnerabilities with that software, and we're recommending you take that away. That's the kind of information we find out on databreachtoday.com, and I encourage you to check it out. I also use an app called Flipboard. There's a cybersecurity category on there where we can learn about news articles and things that are going on in the market. What's interesting is as the vendors are watching the material that are showing up on the web about data breaches, they are putting together the scare tactics just like you and I are. So we have this image of a hacker, a bad guy that we need to protect against, and the image looks a little like this, doesn't it? When you think of a hacker or someone that's doing all these terrible things, we think of the hoodie and the anonymous mask, and they're always dark, and they're kind of a shady character. And the idea here is we want to scare the customer into thinking we have to do something about this. But then as they dive in, they find out that IDC now says that there's 44 areas of security to deal with. So that's a lot of product to buy, and no one can afford to buy all that product at one time. So they need a trusted advisor like you to help guide them down a path. Let's start here in security, and then we'll move here, and then we'll end up here. So I wanted to do a little exercise. I went to Google to find out, what does Google say a hacker is? And so this is what comes back when you Google for the word hacker. I noticed a couple of themes here. First of all, I'm pretty confident a hacker's favorite movie is what? The Matrix, right? Green, ones and zeros, binary code. I have no idea what the little vortex thing is. Maybe if you become a hacker, you go down the vortex. I don't know. You can see there's a theme in that there's hoodies. It's dark. This is the image that we portray the public when we think of a hacker. But the truth is, hackers are likely the guy working in the cubicle next to you. That at night they moonlight launching ransomware attacks for a little extra cash. Hackers are often nation state now. Much of the hacking community's moved away from the amateur and more toward nation state. There are entire countries that send out cyber operatives into the world to perform cybercrime and send the money back to fund militaries. And that happens on a regular basis with some very prominent countries. So it's an industry, right? So what I thought we would do today is, before we jump into some of the best practices on how to build a security business, I want to show you how simple it is for a bad guy to be a bad guy. And we're going to do that by illustrating what it looks like to build a botnet. Now, if you don't know what a botnet is, that means that a bad guy will compromise a set of thousands or tens of thousands of devices, oftentimes IoT devices. I blame Colin for this. So they'll oftentimes compromise these IoT devices like web cameras or home routers or thermostats in your home, and they will take them over and then use them to launch attacks against other people. So imagine 100,000 devices all pointing traffic at one website. That's how you take it down. We call that a distributed denial of service attack. That's why one would build a botnet. So let's look at how easy it is for a bad guy to be a bad guy. There's 3 simple steps to building a botnet. Number 1, you need to identify widely deployed devices that have old firmware. Now, I'm going to be talking about some things that I probably shouldn't be talking about on stage with you guys. So this is all in the family. When we leave this room, we don't talk about what we talked about in here. So I do not endorse you doing these things or being bad guys, but I do want you to see how easy it is. So when I started Googling around looking for firmware, old software that could operate IoT devices and that hadn't been patched in a while, I came across some software called a BOA web server. Now, this is a wiki page. BOA web server, it turns out, was written back in the 2002, 2003 timeframe. Web servers are nice to put on wireless security cameras, an example, so you can connect to it remotely and operate the camera. The problem is this BOA web server was written in 2002-ish. 2005 is when the guy discontinued working on it. But it turns out that the BOA web server showed up in about 100 different types of devices and hundreds of thousands of total devices around the world. But it hasn't been supported since 2005. It sounds like an awesome target for us. So I started looking. A guy named Paul Phillips wrote the BOA web server, so I thought, what is that guy doing today? Well, he's apparently a world poker champion. In fact, I think I saw him down the hall when I was walking over here. So he's not supporting the BOA web server anymore. He probably forgot how to spell it. But it's deployed on hundreds of thousands of devices around the world right now. So that leads us to our number 2 step in building a botnet, which is to identify the exploit. So a vulnerability is when some piece of software has a bug in it, a problem, something that someone could, in theory, use to get inside the application. And it turns out the BOA web server, through a simple Google search, has a ton of vulnerabilities with it. An exploit is when someone writes a piece of software to leverage that vulnerability to get inside the device and control it. So I thought to myself, well, I wonder, do I need to be a coder to be a bad guy? Or has someone already written the exploit? So it turns out, as no shock to you, I'm sure, if you Google for BOA web server exploits, there's a couple of links there where people have already written this stuff. In fact, clicking on this link, which you should not do, shows some software you can download that's already written that will exploit the vulnerabilities in the BOA web server and allow you into the device, so you can then change the default password so that the proper owner cannot gain access to his own equipment. And then you can push out additional code so that you can launch attacks against third parties. So we've now identified an exploit we didn't even have to write. And lastly, we need to identify targets and attack those targets. And so if only there was a search engine out there on the web that could search for any type of IoT device that's on the publicly addressable website or IP address, and if we could identify all the BOA web server-based devices of a certain firmware version in a certain country and get a list of the IP addresses to attack, wouldn't that be cool? Well, it turns out that the hacker community is very ingenious, and they have developed just such a search engine, and it's called Shodan. Now, you did not hear this from me, but Shodan is exactly that. It is a search engine for IoT devices that match any kind of filter criteria you want to give it. It's any type of publicly addressable device that responds with a header request call and allows you to search for things. So in this case, we are searching for BOA web server-based devices. Now, I have an account on Shodan. You have to pay different types of subscription fees to gain access to more and more information, more and more capability. A free search revealed 1,449 devices who specifically have BOA web server version 0.94 on them in a bunch of countries. And if you can read, it's kind of fine print here. There's 902 devices in China that are running this version of the BOA web server that has the exact vulnerabilities that I could compromise. Now, paying a little extra money to Shodan, I can download a list of IP addresses, and then I write a little script to just run my exploit against each one at a time. Notice that so far, the only skill I need to have to do all this is knowing how to use Google search. You don't have to be a coder necessarily to be a bad guy. And this is what your customers are up against. There's ways to mitigate these types of attacks. This particular idea of building a botnet to attack customers, you could sell them endpoint security solutions to protect those endpoints that are being compromised. Maybe you need firewalls in front of these BOA web servers so someone can't even discover that it's a BOA web server. Maybe you're selling them patch management solutions to patch devices when they get old or replace them if they're on 10-year-old firmware, which I would highly suggest that you do. Maybe you're deploying DDoS mitigation services like F5 Silverline that will reroute traffic away from a company who's being attacked by a botnet. There's lots of things you can sell your customer to mitigate against this particular problem, but the point is I want you to know that you don't have to be a rocket scientist to be a bad guy. So, in fact, Tech Data has put together a series of offerings in our security business designed to help you build a security business so that you can help mitigate against these hackers who are wreaking havoc on our networks. And what I want to do for just a moment is list for you the categories of security offerings that I have to bring to bear to help you build a security business. And then we're going to look at what are 7 common things I'm seeing our partners do as they do build a security business. So first of all, we offer assessments. Now, my hope is that all of you who are investing in security can do your own assessments because that implies a level of maturity that I hope that you have. But if you're building assessments, or maybe you don't have every type of assessment available, we're here for you to dip into us and leverage our capability. So we have business assessments in areas like healthcare and retail and public sector and education. We have technical assessments like penetration testing and vulnerability assessments. I have W-2 employees who can subcontract under you to perform those pen test and vulnerability assessments. So assessments are the best way to find opportunity in your account because if you go assess their security posture, we can produce these big reports that show you exactly where to focus your sales efforts. We also have a great technology line card. We have some of the best vendors in the market in security. We are working very hard to even expand into some new areas of security with some new vendors that we'll be announcing here soon. So we break our vendors down into categories like endpoint security or perimeter security, identity and access management, and others so that you can decide how to focus your security business. Because as we're going to talk about a little later, you shouldn't try to be all things to all people all the time in the security space. There's too much to know. So the third area is consulting services. We have field technical resources that can help you learn how to do demos and proof of concepts for some of our technology vendors, get you certified and authorized on those technology vendors. We have some limited billable consulting capability around areas like IBM and McAfee as well. So consulting services is a great business for you guys. It doesn't scale as well, though, as managed security services does. And I know many of you, having talked to you guys, that you're building security managed services businesses, and I think that's awesome because it's monthly recurring revenue. Now, Tech Data offers a solution, and I appreciate Mike mentioning it. Recon SOC is a 24/7 security operations center offering. We have a SOC in the US and in India, so we have 24/7, 365 coverage. The idea is we deploy a very small agent at the end customer. We monitor or pull in their log data and their information about their network, send it up to the cloud with chain of custody and encryption in mind. And then from a cloud portal, not only do you as the partner get to see the high-level summary of events happening in your customer, they can see it if they'd like to. If you're the outsourced IT provider for your customer, we have a cloud portal just for you to help manage that customer site. The portal, a version of that portal is used by the SOC team to manage events. We keep data for about a year on average so that we can slow search that data looking for signs of threat. Oftentimes, you don't identify threat until you see anomalies happening month by month over different parts of your network. So, subscription service, monthly recurring revenue, it's a great offering. We allow you to do a 30-day assessment for your customer so that they can try before they buy. It's no cost, and we have like an 85% success rate when you have your end customer do an assessment for 30 days, converting to a closed deal. So that solution, Recon SOC, is backed by Cybersecurity, which many of you guys know them. We've been selling Cybersecurity for a long time here at Tech Data, and we're very excited about the offering. Education is another category of security that my team is here to help with. Two forms. Number one, I can help train your sales teams in how to speak the language of security. What's a SIM solution? What's a pen test mean exactly? How do you learn how to tell stories to help your customer understand the impact to their business of not doing something about cybersecurity? We have pre-recorded videos that you can watch on demand on our partner portal. Second, we offer through our Exit Certified business the ability for you to sell technical product training from our vendors to your end customer. You can make 20 to 30 points of margin for just attaching training credits to your quotes through Tech Data. And then your customer can come and use those training credits to buy down any type of training we offer, instructor-led, virtual instructor-led, self-paced, etc. So we offer a lot of offerings for you to use in building a security business. In addition to those offerings that you can leverage a la carte, we have a practice builder program as well. And what I would like to do today is give you some anecdotes on what I'm hearing from our partners who are building security practices through our practice builder program. We do things like talk about how to build a strategy around security business. What types of security should you invest in? What areas, what vendors, etc. We talk through training and enablement for your team through a skills analysis. Do you need new training in some new vendor or type of security? We help with marketing programs and figuring out how best to go to market, maybe through social media. We'll talk about how to build a services business around security so that you can invest in assessments, penetration testing, implementation services, managed services, etc. And then sales execution is a category of how do you actually execute and measure success. So if we think about this being the categories of building a security business, there's 7 specific things that I found are helpful in discussions with my partners around how to build a security business. And I usually talk through these 7 things when I go sit on site with partners and have these discussions. And number 1, if you're building a security business, is you need a good security leader. Because having a technical demo guy is good, but you're only going to get so far without an industry credible leader who can sit in front of your customer and have a business discussion with a CISO about security. And so there's a couple of things that I recommend if you're looking for a security leader. You want someone, if you can find one, who's been a CISO, because they understand the customer perspective of what it means to identify risk in the environment and mitigate that risk. You want someone who has some services experience, because the opportunity for you is not just in selling vendor product in security, although that's a great opportunity. It's coupling managed services or consulting services with it that makes the margin excel. You want someone with solution sales experience, because in my experience, customers don't have one security vendor or one type of security product. I mentioned before, IDC says there's 44 areas of security. So a solution approach lets you think about, how do you couple the firewall offering with the identity and access management with the endpoint security in a creative way? How do you maybe even create multi-vendor solutions? Because we found out recently that SMBs, customers, have an average of 10 to 12 different security vendors in their environment. Mid-size customers have 20 to 30 different unique security vendors in their environment, and enterprise customers can oftentimes have 50 plus. Tech Data has more than 50 different security vendors for different areas and categories of security. So thinking multi-vendor is important. And lastly, be aware of the new relevant vendors in the market. Your security leader should be on top of who's up and coming in the space that we should be looking at. So after you hire a security leader, it's very important to define the area of security you want to invest in. I see a lot of partners start out trying to tackle all of security at once. And I got to tell you, I haven't seen that be very successful. The way I like to put it is this: if you are selling to the SMB market, if that customer is coming to you for all their IT needs, yeah, you need to have some level of confidence in many areas of security and be prepared to help them with anything at a cursory level. But that doesn't mitigate when you're going after the mid-size or the enterprise customer. You want to be known for something in the market. Be good at a lot of things, but be known for one or two. Maybe it's identity and access management for you because you are a services provider. And identity and access management has 2 and 3 month-long projects. If you're a software partner, maybe you need to be thinking about something like security information and event management or SIM solutions, because they're complex software and solve complex business problems. If you're a hardware partner, maybe you talk about hardware appliances like firewalls or intrusion detection systems. Just the other day, I was at a partner on site. We were doing a workshop for like 5 or 6 hours, and they said, you know, Alex, I don't need your full practice builder program. Can you guys just come in and hear what we're doing? Because we invested in security a year ago. I hired a good leader, and we're not growing in a year, and we don't know why. So we came in and we listened to their overview of their business, and 15 minutes, I said, okay, I think I found the issue. And the problem was simple: ask a couple of questions. So first I said, how many sales reps do you have? 8. Okay. What do they sell? Like, what are they good at? For the last 5 years, what are they selling? NetApp storage, okay? So then I asked, how are they paid? Well, they're franchise model. So they're 100% commission. They can sell anything they want. We don't have any way to steer them. They're their own business in their region, their territory. All right, so what areas of security did you invest in? SIM solutions, security intelligence, and identity and access management. 2 of the most complex software security offerings you could pick. And I said, do you see the problem yet? You've got a sales team that only knows how to sell storage and hardware, and your security guy got all excited and he picked all complex software. No wonder you're not growing. And so we spent the rest of the meeting realigning their security strategy to sell data security and network security, because data security ties into their storage strategy, and network security because they know how to sell hardware appliances like firewalls and intrusion detection systems. It's adjacent. So deciding on the areas of security to invest in oftentimes means take a hard look at your own sales organization and what can they sell effectively to grow. Number 3 is to select security vendors to sell. Now, this is oftentimes a tricky subject because there's a lot to choose from. Trust me, I know. I've talked to probably 50 security vendors in the last couple of months. So I was at RSA a couple weeks ago, which was in San Francisco. It's one of the biggest security events of the year, next to Black Hat. And there's two massive halls full of booths of security vendors. I didn't even recognize a lot of the names. I spent half the trip just going around learning who are you again and what do you do? So what I would tell you is, as you're picking vendors, you want to listen to your customers for what they're interested in. Some customers want to approach security in a best-of-breed model. I want to have the best of this, this, and this, and I'll pick the best vendor for each category. Some customers see the value in going with a what I like to call a fabric approach. So one vendor who has solutions for many categories of security that all work well together. And that's a great approach. Fortinet's a great example of that with their fabric solution. Cisco has built quite a bit of integrated security solutions, and so have many of our vendors. So customers have different interests in how they want to approach the market, and so some customers want to be bleeding edge with all the next gen stuff, and some customers want to go more traditional route with the tried and true stuff. So listen to your customers when you're picking the right vendor. And then evaluate the channel program of that vendor to figure out how lucrative is the program. What kind of resources do they offer me in order to help be better at what we do? Consider picking vendors that integrate well together, because multi-vendor approaches is just the reality of the cyber market today. Customers have multiple vendors normally. And then lastly, don't neglect training your sales staff correctly on the vendors you pick. I was with a partner the other day who they hired a security leader. He came in, he's a one-man show. He's the overlay guy, right, which is a common scenario. And he picked like 10 vendors to partner with at first. And he's the expert in them, but nobody else in the company even knows what these vendors do. And I said, you've got to spend time training your sales team to speak the language of security and the vendors that you offer on your line card, or it's going to be hard to think that those sales reps can mention your security solutions so that they can bring the smart guy into the meeting. The fourth step is to create solution offerings. And we've talked about this a little bit, but creating things like assessments are key if you want to find opportunity in your account. Next, I would say that consulting services are great because they're billable work and you can make money at that. Margins are 30%. They're great. It's hard to scale that. It scales as far as your bench is. But managed services can scale much larger in the sense that it's monthly recurring revenue, and with a small subset of people, you can manage a large number of customers. And if you have a managed services business, I would encourage you to continue with that. If you don't have that yet, we would love for you to leverage the work that we've done. I have some partners that take my monitoring service, Recon SOC, and couple it with a managed service that the partner has, like maybe device management, firewall management. Merge the two together and offer a whole new offering to your customer. We have partners doing that today. We've talked about multi-vendor offerings and end-user training. Think solutions when you think security, not point products. The sixth category here is to launch a go-to-market plan on how you're going to take your security business to market. And this takes lots of different forms. And we don't have time today to talk through what a full marketing plan would look like. But I want to leave you with these 4 questions to ask. First of all, really define what exactly you're selling. It can't be everything in security. Be good at lots of things, but be known for 1 or 2. And it's those 1 or 2 that you want to specifically market around to get interest into the organization. Define who you're selling to. Is it a region of the country? Is it a market segment? Is it a vertical? Be very clear as you market. How are you going to reach your target audience? Are you going to do social? We found from Pam yesterday that digital and social marketing is an excellent way to market to your customers, because 70% of the research they're going to do before they ever call you. 70%. They'll do online. That's crazy. So you need to be there, as Pam told us yesterday. And where are you going to promote your solutions? Are you going to do lunch and learns? Or are you going to, what is that marketing launch plan? So this is a critical step in building a security business. And lastly, I would say, and this is not rocket science, sell, sell, sell. And what I like to talk about here with my partners is make sure your sales team is motivated to sell security, or they're not going to. The example I gave a minute ago of that partner that decide that they have a franchise sales model. Their reps can sell anything. There's no way to steer them. That makes it very difficult to sell security solutions if they could make their numbers selling storage. Not that that's a bad thing, but if you have an executive level decision to build a security business, then you need to think about how to properly motivate the sales organization. Leverage client relationships you already have. The best thing you can do is to go back to people you've already sold servers to, sell them endpoint. You've sold laptops to, sell them endpoint solutions. If you've sold network equipment, go back and sell them firewall technology. There's existing sales you've already made with existing customers. Bundling that security solution with a non-security solution is a highly effective way to sell and go to market. And lastly, I would mention, leverage what we've already built until you have it yourself. So we have assessments and we have managed services and consulting services and education, and you can use these things as you build your business. Now, if you're wondering how you would reach out to us and ask for that help, I'm going to leave you today with just one web email address to write down: securityservices@techdata.com. If you email us there, we have a team of people that monitor that mailbox. Tell us what you're looking for. We'd be more than happy to help you get exactly what you need, or hand you off to many of our trusted partners in the room who do specific niche things in security that we leverage oftentimes. So hopefully I wasn't too scary. That wasn't the goal. But and don't go build a botnet. That would be wrong, even though you now know how to do it, sort of. I hope you guys have a great week, and thank you very much for the time.